Hello everyone, Darren Wood here. After taking some time to process, I am finally ready to talk about Avengers Infinity War. And you've waited long enough, so let's just get straight into it. And caution, this is a spoiler discussion, so if you haven't seen it yet, I'll see you later. Let me start by saying, this movie was one tall-ass order. It is a feat in itself that this movie was executed successfully. Not only did it have to provide a satisfying climax of 10 years and 18 movies worth of universe building, it had to improve upon all those previous movies while creating a new experience, live up to the enormous hype, and feature more characters than ever before without exhausting the audience. Like, there was so much pressure and so many expectations, it's beyond impressive that Marvel Studios even pulled this off. And I think that Infinity War did everything that it needed to do. But as expected, this movie is an experience and a half. It's a lot in both good and bad ways. To me, it's definitely a movie that gets better on the second viewing, which I think is the mark of strong, lasting content. Because I feel like with a lot of epic series, you have so much anxiety when you first read or watch something because you're so focused on finding out what comes next. Like, you're so overcome with the emotions that you miss all the artistic nuances that are put in. Like, I felt that way with Catching Fire and Storm of Swords and Harry Potter and Dune. But when you go back and revisit it, you can relax and take your time comprehending the whole package. And same with Infinity War. After I first saw it, I was just like, whoa, my soul just got ripped out and rearranged. I don't even know what I'm feeling. And then upon second viewing, I was able to appreciate the tactful structure of the movie. And I was pleasantly surprised that unlike a lot of other big epic movies, it didn't feel too long or too heavy the second time around. Although I will say that by the end of it, you are emotionally exhausted. And I think that's because since it's so long and there's so much going on, you experience so many different emotions that by the end of it, you're in this weird state of confusion. Like, after I first saw it, I went straight to work and everyone was like, how was the movie? And I didn't even know how to answer because I couldn't even fully process what I had just seen. And then when I saw it again, I realized they balanced tragedy and comedy, so it's confusing to sum it up as a whole, but it's that balance that kept this crazy tragedy from feeling like this long, depressing, soul-sucking experience. I was really impressed with the pacing of this movie. With so many stories to tell and characters to show, I thought it would feel disjointed and be hard to follow, but the stories flowed very nicely. The only parts that felt a little slower were some of the Thor, Rocket, and Groot scenes, but it wasn't too bad. But it's definitely something that will feel more satisfying once we have Avengers 4, because it's something that's meant to be experienced as one complete balanced story. And that's the struggle with these two-part movies. It's kind of hard to judge one movie without the other. Like, Infinity War was Thanos' movie, and Avengers 4 will be the heroes' movie because they needed to break it up. Like, I feel like they learned from their previous ambitious projects like Age of Ultron and Civil War. Like, they learned from Age of Ultron that they can't focus on both the hero and the villain's development because there's too many characters and it feels too crowded and too exhausting. And then in Winter Soldier, they showed that they learned from the previous sequels that the story works best when they challenge the characters and take them in new directions. So in Civil War, they did take the heroes in new directions by focusing the conflict on the heroes and using the villain mostly as a way to move the plot along. But then when it came to Infinity War, they needed to up the stakes, up the excitement, and make it feel bigger. And it did, because since this was Thanos' movie, there were real consequences that upped the stakes and upped the intensity, and because the stakes were higher, it allowed for it to feel like a bigger conflict. And even though each hero only got a few lines, it was fine because we already know the heroes, and to me, the few moments we got still felt like authentic character moments. What we really needed was to spend time with Thanos. And now that most of them are gone, we can shift back to the heroes with an already developed antagonist and make a complete experience. And to everyone who's criticizing Infinity War, saying that it's not a movie that anyone can watch if you haven't seen the other movies, duh, that's the whole point. Why would they waste time on exposition to make it more understandable for the average movie-going audience to, make more money? Check the box office numbers. They don't need it. I thought they started off the movie really strong. Right off the bat, you see Thanos beat the shit out of the Hulk, and you're like, oh shit. And then he kills Heimdall, and you're like, oh shit. And then he kills Loki, and you're like, no shit. Plus, I thought that little "we have a whole callback" line was pretty cute. And I think killing Loki first was a smart move because losing him is a big deal. You know, it hits a strong emotional chord because he's been there since the very beginning, he's a fan favorite, and somehow, some way, that greasy-haired little cockroach has always managed to escape death, and killing him first was a good way to show that Thanos ain't nothing to fuck with and that the stakes are very real. I like that they did a time jump without spending time on exposition. It allowed for the characters to come from a new place and didn't waste time on cliche romance moments that we didn't need to see, but gave us romance moments that we wanted to see. Because as those of you who watch my Twitch streams know, I want some more lovin' in the MCU. Like, when is Captain America gonna get some ass? Like that poor guy. And that little kiss with Sharon Carter doesn't count. He needs to take that shit to the bedroom. He's like 100 years old already. It's time to get some. Let Captain America fuck. But it validated where you thought the couples would go from where they last left off, like Tony wanting to have a baby and Pepper being like, dude, you're not ready to be a dad because you still want to be Iron Man and you think you can do both, but you really can't and you really shouldn't, and he probably knows she's right, he just doesn't want to admit it, although I'm sure he'll come to terms with that in some way in Avengers 4. I actually really like what they've done with Peter and Gamora's love story in the MCU. James Gunn said that he and Zoe Saldana specifically discussed not having them kiss at the end of Guardians 2 because it was out of character. Like, Gamora is not one to get swept up in a passionate moment. Their love is more than just attraction. It's a love that's grown and is based on a deep friendship, and after everything they've lost, they've really latched onto each other, so for me, their scenes in Infinity War were really emotionally charged and definitely had me reaching for the tissues. I love seeing Vision and Scarlet Witch finally come together in their little Romeo and Juliet kind of way. I was super into it, but I realized that's only because I've read the comics and I love them together, when in actuality they're like the least developed pairing in the MCU. Because I asked my friends who haven't read the comics and they said they weren't really feeling for it, but damn, I was crying super hard when she was destroying the Mind Stone in his head. Like, Elizabeth Olsen is talented, even if she dropped the Russian accent. I was bummed that we didn't get a Bruce and Natasha moment, but it's fine because it wouldn't have fit in the movie anyway, and now that I know that they're part of the few remaining survivors, it seems like they're setting it up to give them a real, proper moment in Avengers 4 anyway, so. And speaking of character pairings, I thought the character pairings were perfect and a lot of fun. Thor and the Guardians were hilarious, and it felt right for Thor after coming from Thor Ragnarok. Like, their initial meeting was one of my favorite moments of the entire movie. I loved the whole thing, and Thor's line where he said all words are made up is one of my favorite lines. Team Cap and Wakanda were fine. They provided some great action scenes, but this movie was definitely not their time to shine. Although we still got some great classic Captain America one-liners, like when Vision is like, one life shouldn't stand before billions, and Cap's like, yeah, well, it should. Or when he's like, we don't trade lives. You know, you can always count on Steve Rogers to hit you with those sobering one-liners. And you know, I didn't think I would like it, but I liked Tony Stark and Doctor Strange together. It's rare that Tony Stark meets someone with just as big of an ego as he has. Like, other people won't take his shit, but he rarely meets someone else that also thinks their shit don't stink. Like, he's used to being so important that people automatically care about what he has to say, but Doctor Strange is just like, you're irrelevant, I'm battling on a different plane here, you know. It was cool to, like, you know, science versus magic. And I thought that the two of them together would be like an overkill of the same sarcastic kind of humor, but they didn't overdo it. It was fun. And of course, I'm glad they continued with the Peter Parker-Tony Stark relationship because it's fantastic. I always think of this line from the Civil War comic where Captain America's talking to Tony Stark and he says something like, Peter Parker wears his need for a father figure on his sleeve and you know that. Except in the MCU, Tony's actually doing right by Peter, and I think that's so precious. I feel like he actually does want to be his mentor, you know, guide the son he doesn't have. It's like his way of securing the future of superheroes. And I'm pretty sure that everyone agrees that that Spider-Man death scene was super hard to watch. Like, props to Tom Holland for improvising that I don't want to go bit. I cry every time I see it. I'll let you know if I ever get over it. Although, I don't think he's really dead. I also think that Bruce seeing Tony and then Steve was very symbolic because he usually acts as the bridge between them, and he'll most likely be the moderator in their upcoming reconciliation in the next movie. But let's talk about the main character of this movie, Thanos. I was so impressed with Thanos. As those of you who watched my last video know, I was very curious and very concerned on how Thanos would turn out for this movie, but wow, they delivered. He was so intense and so scary. It made me so happy. I like that they didn't strictly sympathize him. Like, I didn't feel bad for him, but I definitely did understand him. He kind of reminded me of Doctor Doom, because I was like, damn, this motherfucker's crazy, but he's got a point, and the scary part is he's actually smart enough to make it happen. Because if you look at it logically, his plan does make sense, and you gotta respect how hard he worked to attain all that power. But it got me thinking, you know, like, I wouldn't be so mad at the idea if there really was a painless, truly random way to eliminate half the life in the universe if it meant it provided better lives for everybody else. Like, sure, I'd disintegrate. But then I was like, but he did murder a shitload of people to get there, and he really doesn't know if it'll make life better, so actually it's just more about his ego and not about helping the universe. Shit. I loved how they designed his character and brought him to life. It was perfect. He was so menacing and imposing. It was like straight out of the comics, and thank God for that, because his previous cameos had me really worried, but you can tell they really put in the work to improve on his whole deal, and Josh Brolin's voice fit him perfectly. Like, for the most part, I thought Thanos looked fantastic, but there were a handful of moments where his CGI face was off, and it really took away from his performance, which is why I typically don't like CGI characters. Like, I'm super picky about CGI characters, because I feel like when they try to mimic human facial expressions, the face is always a little bit off, and it's really distracting to me. And then obviously every time he tried to pick something or someone up, it looked really weird. I just felt like some scenes where Thanos was supposed to be really scary or really emotional were diminished by the CGI rendering, but you know, I wish everything could be makeup and prosthetics, but I know that's not possible. However, I thought the Black Order looked amazing, like better than Thanos sometimes in my opinion. And maybe that's because they didn't have human looking faces and they were less colorful and they talked less, but I thought the CGI on them was super rad and super creepy. I loved it. Well, maybe except for Proxima Midnight. Her facial movements were a little weird, but Ebony Maw and Corvus Glaive, like, yes. But despite the limitations of CGI, I thought that Thanos and Gamora's scenes provided some of the most powerful and emotional moments of the entire movie. I really have to give it up for Zoe Saldana. That woman can act her butt off. She really was a driving force in a lot of those scenes. Although I will say that Chris Pratt really brought the tears in that scene in Nowhere. Like, I cried. But I would say one of my standout moments of the entire movie was the Soul Stone scene in Volmir. I thought it was so well done. It hits you with these strong emotional points, like one right after the other. Like, first it hits you with anxiety as you're waiting for Gamora to realize what's going on, and then it's heartbreaking as you watch realization crawl across her face, and then it's fear as he starts walking towards her, and then the scene intensifies and she goes to kill herself, and then it's anguish, and then that anguish builds to horror and devastation as it switches that slow motion silence where he grabs her and throws her off the cliff. Like, ugh, my heart. And for the most part, I like what they did with their relationship. Like, through their dynamic, you got to see who he really was and how he was a terrifying and narcissistic sociopath. Like, a sociopath's version of love is very selfish and very manipulative. Like, he loves Gamora, but only as a reflection of himself, like how he says he gave her the best parts about her. And he genuinely wants her in his life, but only if it's in service to his needs and if he's in control. And I thought it was an interesting setup because, trust me, there's plenty of people in real life without Infinity Gauntlets that treat relationships this way. It also showed how the corruption of power and ego can create an impenetrable mindset. Like, it didn't matter what obstacles or reasoning stood in his way. He had gotten to a point where he truly believed that no other opinion was superior to his. My only issue was I thought the childhood scene could have been done better. It seemed kind of random that he chose Gamora out of all those people, especially since it's not like he has some soft spot for children. And I could tell when he said, "Oh, you're quite the fighter," it was supposed to imply that he liked that she was tough and wasn't scared of him. But all she did was rip her hand away from a soldier. Like, they should have showed her trying to, like, take on the soldier or steal his weapon or something, because then it would have made sense why she stood out and why Thanos liked her. But before we move on, I'll just mention some other things that stood out. I thought there was a good balance of action and story. A lot of big epic movies tend to rely on action as a plot device, but the action scenes in this movie were very well earned. I loved all the fight sequences. I thought they did a good job of showing everybody off. I liked all the new Spidey suit stuff and the Iron Man nanotech stuff, which I was surprised by because I didn't think I'd like it, because for me, nanotech is a little too easy and it's a little too unbelievable, but I like that they gave it limits, like that scene where Iron Man was fighting all the way to the end of his suit was really intense and really powerful. I was super into all the Doctor Strange mystical shit, especially when he did his Hindu god arms and split into a bunch of other Doctor Stranges. And I read that the reason why Hindu gods are depicted with multiple arms is because those arms appear when they're battling cosmic forces as a way to express their supreme power and perform numerous acts at once. Like, can I get a hell yeah for details and layers? And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure he used his classic Crimson Bands of Sidorak, so that was fun. I love that Groot provided the handle for Stormbreaker, and oh my god, when Thor showed up in Wakanda with Rocket on his shoulder and Groot standing by him, that was so awesome. That was such a fun moment. And Thor with his lightning shit, like, more of that please. I love it so much. But one of the things I didn't like that Star-Lord ruined everything. Like, it was kind of a shit deal to put on him, and it made him super unlikable. Like, I get it, you know, after everything he's gone through and everything he's lost, Gamora's like the last thing he has, and to lose her is like to lose the will to live. But did he have to have such a classic testosterone ego moment? Like, come on, like, it would have been better if the Gamora revelation acted as a distraction and Thanos overpowered them, because I do believe that Doctor Strange saw all the possible timelines, and like the comics, the only one they win requires Thanos to get all the Infinity Stones and ultimately destroy himself. But it was all Peter's fault. It was all Peter's fault. I like that the remaining heroes are the original Avengers. I feel like it sets up for a really nice conclusion that brings the whole franchise full circle. You know, bring Tony and Steve back together before one or both of them dies, and, you know, give Bruce and Natasha the moment they deserve. I'm sorry, I just really want that shit to happen so hard it's not even funny. And since Doctor Strange traded Tony's life for the Time Stone and Thanos knew who he was, it seems like Tony's gonna play a big role in Avengers 4, which I think is very appropriate and makes me very happy, because he's like the daddy of the MCU, you know, he brought the shit to life, he's moved it along, it's only appropriate that he has a heavy hand in sending it off. I also think that Tony and Nebula being the only survivors on Titan was very poetic. You know, Tony's been running away from this nightmare since Age of Ultron, and it finally caught up to him. And then to have Nebula survive was just like a cruel twist of fate. You know, someone Thanos truly doesn't care about and who has repeatedly tried to kill him gets to be part of the few random people who survive. Although, we'll have to wait and see if she plays a big role in his defeat like she does in the comics. And I am very curious to see how Rocket and Okoye are going to play into the whole thing in Avengers 4. I mean, I'm glad they survived, I really like them, but curious, nonetheless. So please leave a comment telling me your theories on that, and also your theories on this, because I can't tell if the Hulk wasn't coming out because he was scared he got his ass beat, or because of that shit from Thor Ragnarok where he was like, if I turn into the Hulk, I might not be able to turn back, so he's all like fucked up now and can't go back and forth as easily. Although, that line where Tony's like, dude, you're embarrassing me in front of the wizards was like one of my favorites. I actually didn't understand why they powered down the Hulk and the Vision, like especially because Thanos is all powerful, so it didn't really seem necessary other than to maybe prolong the story. Also, there was no explanation why Cap was able to hold the gauntlet like this. I'm guessing it was because he was holding it open and Thanos can only use the gauntlet if he closes his fists. And I think they wanted to have a moment where Thanos like notices Captain America, because I think Captain America dying is going to be like the climax of Avengers 4. But now for some Infinity Stone speculation. I think that because the Infinity Gauntlet was all melted, there's going to be some shit about there being consequences for trying to wield the Infinity Stones, like how Red Skull was banished for trying to wield the Space Stone. Because I'm sure the Infinity Stones are still kicking, but I think that at least one of them is going to have some weird shit going on with it, like Doctor Strange putting a spell on the Time Stone so he can like reverse everything from the moment he handed it over, or like Vision still being in the Mind Stone. And I think that because Vision turned all gray and Shuri only half finished his consciousness, they could totally do a White Vision from the comics where they like rebuilt him and reprogrammed him and he was Vision but he wasn't Vision, you know what I mean? Like he had all his memories but he had none of his emotional attachments. It was actually pretty sad. Or, and this seems very plausible, that Gamora is still living trapped in the soul world within the soul gem with Adam Warlock, because, you know, they have their whole little thing, and he has his whole thing with Thanos, and he plays a big role in the Infinity Gauntlet storyline. But also, probably not, because James Gunn said that Adam Warlock wouldn't be joining the MCU until Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but I don't know. Maybe they're lying. I doubt they'll bring the Celestials and the Elders into it, but I hope Gamora's still there. She, like, haunts his ass. But while I do think some characters are going to come back, like Spider-Man and the Black Panther, I do think a lot of the characters are going to stay dead, because you really have to let things go in order to usher in a new era. And this way, some of the characters from the previous era can help ease us into the new era. It's time to pass the torch, and even though it breaks my fucking heart, it's better to bow out gracefully while things are good than to drag it out until it gets bad. You know, be Breaking Bad, not How I Met Your Mother. But that's all I got for now. I could go on forever, but it's time to wrap up this long ass video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you guys for being patient with me. I know I'm like the last Infinity War video up, but you guys know me. I like to take my time, collect my thoughts, and really figure my shit out. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please check out my other ones and share it with a friend. Don't forget to give me a like, give me a subscribe, go follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and if you haven't checked it out already, I've been doing a weekly live stream on Twitch. You can find all the information for that below, or stay updated on my Twitter or Instagram. But until next time, I will see you later.